What's up, y'all? Welcome back to my channel. I missed y'all. I missed y'all so much. I hope everybody has been doing well. And if this is your first time joining me on today, welcome. I am your host, Megan. Here we use information from celestial bodies to help us gain a better understanding of our favorite celebrities, world events, but most importantly, ourselves. So come on in, have a seat. And yeah, I really missed y'all. It's just been so much going on in the world. So I hope everybody is doing, the best they can, holding your own. And I wish we could be acquainted on a better note. But unfortunately, we will be talking about Malcolm Jamal Warner today, okay? So for those of y'all who are not aware, Malcolm Jamal Warner, he's a child actor, most notably known for his role as Theo Huxtable on The Cosby Show. He unfortunately transitioned while he was vacationing in Costa Rica. And so not much has come out surrounding his passing, but from what I've heard, what I've gathered thus far, right, supposedly he was vacationing in Costa Rica with his 8-year-old daughter. They were in the water together at some point and apparently got caught in some type of current, some type of tide, and essentially, had to be rescued, and unfortunately, Malcolm Jamal Warner, he passed away as a result of drowning, okay? To my understanding, somebody came and helped the daughter and then came and helped him. And so from what we know, it's looking like a death by drowning. And it's really sad. It goes without saying. It's really sad. He was such a talented person. And, with me having Capricorn on my North Node, having to face getting older, and a part of getting older is coming face to face and coming terms to the fact that, if you live to get older, you're going to see the people that you know and love or people that you're fond of, they're going to die. That's a part of life. And even in tragic ways and in timely ways. And it's just, having to come to terms with that is, it's just sad. It's sad and it's chilling, it's sobering. In this situation, it was just, it was unfortunate. So, rest in peace to Malcolm Jamal Warner. But what I wanted to do today was to take a look at his natal chart, because as per usual, the planetary alignments, right, that exist within our chart do have direct influence over the events that happen within our lives, but also the psychological influences. So you could say that the planetary alignments that we have within our birth charts have influence over external events, but also over internal and psychological events and influences. So without further ado, let's just go ahead and get started. So Malcolm Jamal Warner was born August 18th, 1970 in New Jersey City, New Jersey, making him a Leo sun. And one of the first things that stood out to me was him being a birth number 18, because that number 1 deals with children, right? That carries a very strong energy signature of children. And considering that he passed away trying to save his child's life, that was very, very literal in terms of how that played out for him, okay? Also, that number 1 could deal with him being an entertainer, him being popular, or him being a celebrity. It could deal with the entertainment industry as a whole, or just him being a very creatively inclined person. And because that number 1 is sitting next to the number 8, a lot of times that creativity is going to be exploited. But 18s can be very successful people. A lot of times they have to find that balance between that success, achievements, material, and worldly accomplishment, and having very fulfilling either personal and or spiritual lives, being more spiritually centered. And from what I've seen, the different clips I've seen, because I remember seeing this clip of Malcolm where he was talking about how he didn't feel desperate enough to take just any role that was handed to him in Hollywood. Like, he felt like he had the type of financial status and as well as just the type of moral status to pick and choose the type of roles that really resonated with him, even long after, he was off of the Cosby Show. And, he was definitely one of those childhood actors, for what it's worth, for what we saw as the public, that seemed to have transitioned well. Like, we didn't see him in any crazy off-the-wall scandals, going to jail, getting hooked on this, hooked on that. Now, we don't know these people personally, but, it was just kind of interesting to see that, because with him being a number 18, like I said, a lot of 18s can be very, hyper materialistic in the sense that, I'll do anything to get to the top. People who will do whatever it takes to get somewhere, including whether it's throwing others under the bus. 18, that number 18 can actually be a nasty number to be tied to, So I thought that was just really interesting, because it contrasts his really, because, from what I've seen, sweet personality, which led me to believe that, it could also be a possibility that he existed around people like this, because I tend to find that with that number 18 too. So if you are not somebody who has a lot of these tendencies, those lower natured, whether it be like violent, mean, sadistic, controlling tendencies, materialistic tendencies, then you could be around people who are like that. And I just thought that was really interesting. But I digress. The number 18, once again, can come with or bring about challenges or high stakes situations involving children or fated situations, because the number 8 can deal with like fated situations and things like that. So, I thought that was interesting. Now, Malcolm has his Leo sun at the 25th degree, squaring his Neptune at the 28th degree of Scorpio. And of course, that theme of children is reinforced as Leo also governs children. Leo is at home, right? So the sun is dignified in Leo, and quite literally, it can deal with your children, your even your life force, your vitality. So with Malcolm having his sun squaring Neptune at the 28th degree, the number 28 also deals with children as well. Neptune and Scorpio, this could manifest in either the death of a child or the drowning of a child, but also him having his life cut short directly as well, right? As a result of drowning on an island, having a deadly vacation. All of that is that sun in Leo squaring Neptune and Scorpio. Neptune can deal with islands. It can deal with, obviously, bodies of water. So, I thought that was very eerie. Also with Leo and having the sun in Leo, reinforcing this theme of entertainment, celebrity, right? That square that is making a Neptune and Scorpio also further lends to my feeling, right, that he has experienced some very dark, very sinister, maybe even corrupt, if we're talking like that Scorpio influence, right? Corrupt influences within the entertainment industry, which, let's be honest, is that really a shock? That's not really shocking news, especially if you are somebody who has been paying attention to what the hell has been going on TV, especially when it comes to these different actors and entertainers and Hollywood execs being exposed. And hello, the Diddy's of the world and the this and the that. There's been so much, that has been said, right, in regards to letting us know exactly what Hollywood is like. And so, especially when we talk about these entertainers who existed well into the 70s and the 80s, before these conversations were, really had on a public scale, these people have probably seen and been around some shit. You know what I'm saying? And so it makes me wonder, if he could have had his, I don't want to get too personal with it, but it just makes me wonder if the reason why he was so protective over his child, and maybe he could have been somebody who was very protective over children in general. Y'all know Leos, they can be especially if positively aspected, can be people who who feel very strongly, a strong sense of protection and purpose in children. And a lot of times the people who feel like this are people who could have been done wrong as children themselves, or know what it's like to not be that person or not have that person and that kind of thing. But I digress. That theme of sacrifice, when we talk about Neptune, especially for Malcolm, this Neptune in Scorpio, squaring his sun also makes me think of like being sacrificed by, Hollywood. And obviously I'm not saying everything has to go back to that, even though, I don't know. I don't want to be that person, that thinks everything is one big conspiracy, but you really just can't put nothing past, Neptune and Scorpio, especially when it's squaring the sun like that. And I'm not saying to say that he had to be a bad person, but this in tandem with his moon in Pisces on the North Node, I just wouldn't be surprised, y'all, if we found out more news about him posthumous. Ain't that what it's called after a person transitions? Or finding out more about... And like I said, he could be a victim of something, because y'all know Pisces does govern victimhood. So does that Neptune influence. So being victimized in Hollywood, it's that energy could be a two-way street. So, it could be somebody being involved in it, but it could also deal with him, being around that, being even on the receiving end of that. And certain news may be coming out about it. It kind of gives me those vibes, y'all. I'm not even going to hold you. Certain things about his private life, especially with that moon in Pisces coming out. If it does, then revisit this video, because I don't know. I just feel it. I'm going to just trust my intuition on that. But that's something that I'm definitely picking up on. But anywho, that moon in Pisces also reinforces this theme of drowning, as does it being... It's not technically conjoined to his North Node. I don't think it's conjoined to his North Node, but he has Pisces on the North Node as well, which actually even points towards the fact that he could be currently experiencing his lunar nodal return. I don't think it's exact, but with Pisces on the North Node, right? These are people... this could be a very fated, once again, a very karmic situation. And by karmic, in this sense, I just mean that something that kind of was destined to happen, if that makes sense. Now, I will say that moon in Pisces could also, especially with him also having Pisces on the North Node, could symbolize him having his legacy cemented as like being, an incredible actor. But even a really good, somebody who may have been really big when it comes to charity and giving back. And I'm not really sure, about his other side quests and endeavors. Y'all feel free to let me know in the comment section. But it also could even speak to someone who passes away due to drowning. The moon could deal with end of life circumstances. Pisces on the North Node, like I said, can deal with our fate. Things that happen to us later in life. So I just thought this was just really interesting. And it reinforces that island theme. Him being somebody who liked to, go on these excursions and vacations where he's out in these, remote places. And a lot of times, because that's tied to, this is how a lot of people with these placements get their spiritual and intuitive downloads. A lot of Pisces moons can be very intuitive, very psychically connected. And being around water, is a really good way to recharge, or, it's a way that a lot of these people are able to connect back to themselves and find peace and all the other good stuff. But especially if other things in the chart kind of support it, they could also, or if it's badly aspected or badly placed, they could be at risk for drowning. Or even poisoning is another strong theme that, could kind of runs congruent with this Pisces moon. Now, I don't know the details as to like, you know, how deep was the body of water or the particular area that, you know, he and his child were in, or, you know, did they have life jackets on versus not? Like, I don't, none of that information to my knowledge has been divulged. I don't know the details. But what I will say is the sun, Malcolm having his sun in Leo, and it's also forming a conjunction to his Mars. This could reinforce this concept of him being like very, you know, extremely protective over his child, you know, but also maybe being a big kid himself. But it also lends itself to him taking dangerous chances, you know, involving his child, dangerous risks. And obviously this is not to blame him in any shape, way, form, or fashion. But I'm wondering if it was one of those things where, you know, it's like he miscalculated how deep the water was going to be, right? Like anytime we make any decision, you know, we're taking a risk. We're taking a gamble. Leo rules risk, gambles, and things like that. So it's making me wonder if like maybe he took a chance with something and he miscalculated, like I said, how deep the water was going to be, or how strong the current was going to be, or whatever the case. And it led to a loss, hence the sun square Neptune in Scorpio. So that was another way to look at it. And once again, I find it very interesting because when you compare that to him also having his sun in Leo square Saturn and Taurus, you know, this aspect tends to be indicative of somebody who is very protective over their children. Well, that's one way it could play out, right? In some cases, I've seen it manifest in a person denying their children altogether or rejecting their children, you know, that kind of thing, or somebody who could be really harsh and cruel to their children. But the other way that this could be expressed, especially with Saturn and Taurus, is, well, number one, Malcolm not having a child until a little later in life because he's 54, right? And his daughter's 8. So y'all do the math, right? So this aspect is actually not that uncommon in the charts of people who don't want to have children at all, or have them, like I said, later. And with Saturn and Taurus, there being a very high priority placed on like safety, security, you know, things like that. These are people who could essentially maybe even feel very inadequate about their ability to care for their child or a child, or someone who can kind of overcompensate and be very like hyper protective about, you know, caring for their child's safety. Another way to look at this sun in Leo squaring his Taurus, his Saturn and Taurus could be like a failure to protect your child, you know, quite literally. And once again, this is not me, I don't know, making any type of judgments or assessments towards Malcolm or his personality, or, you know, whatever the case may be. These are just like literal interpretations of this aspect, right? And so, like I said, I had no doubt, especially with him having that Sun-Mars conjunction, that, you know, he really found a lot of purpose in being a father. He really wanted to be a father, where that little girl could have been the apple of his eye. No doubt about it. And where, you know, in a lot of ways, you know, these are the type of parents where, you know, their child is almost like, I don't know if he named his daughter after himself. That could be another manifestation of that Sun-Mars conjunction in Leo. you and your child having the same name, or naming her after you. Or, you know, just having that very heavy investment, like I'm going to do it all myself type of parent. Now, with that sun squaring Saturn and Taurus too, that could also deal with there being issues with money, like especially with financial or child support, or where he could have been very tough on her. You know, being the type of father where you have to like prove yourself, you got to earn your own key, you know, not really the dad that's really finna just, you know, bankroll you into the sunset. You know, these are dads who might be stingy with their money, and kind of go over the top to make sure their children are able to, like, you know, get it out the mud, maybe like they did. Sun square Saturn could, especially with Saturn and Taurus, could bring about like either somebody who struggled financially growing up, or who had to learn a lot of difficult karmic lessons involving money and their ability to keep money coming in. Which reminds me, okay, this aspect could also be indicative of Malcolm feeling pressure to take certain roles in Hollywood for financial stability, or because him not doing so, you can see where this may have put a strain on his income with that Saturn and Taurus, which I thought it was really funny, once again, because there are interviews where he's talking about how, you know, he really prides himself, that Leo energy, in not having to just take on whatever just to say, you know, that he did, or just to say that he can, you know, finance himself and feed himself, where he's just destitute, taking all type of roles that are not in accordance with his values, hence that Saturn and Taurus. I think his moon, that moon in Pisces sextile in that Saturn and Taurus, also makes it, or made it a lot easier for him to gravitate towards roles that did, you know, align with his values, and you know, to keep his, you know, to keep his image intact, and you know, kind of navigate in a way that he felt like, you know, the way that his mother raised him, you know, with that moon sextile and Saturn. So I thought that was interesting too. So that could be a reason why his Sun square Saturn maybe did not hit him, you know, or did not take that much of a toll on him, or maybe it seemed like it didn't. It's a really good example of how you can have an aspect in, you know, based on maybe other aspects in your chart, especially if it's a harsh aspect, you can find ways around it, right? Navigate ways to kind of, you know, overcome the challenges presented by that square. Anywho, but this square could also have led to him not feeling good enough, especially when it comes to just his own self-esteem, his ability to earn money, his ability to even play instruments, because y'all know he plays instruments. So with his Sun square and Taurus, that Saturn and Taurus, I'm wondering if, like, you know, he questioned his ability to, you know, like, play, or like question his ability as a musician, or, you know, maybe if he could do it all over, he probably would have leaned more into the musician side of things as opposed to acting. You know, these are all kind of downloads that kind of ran through my mind after looking at this square. This square is also very much indicative of that notorious episode of The Cosby Show, where y'all know where he came down the stairs wearing like that raggedy ass. Somebody was supposed to be making him a designer shirt, and he put it on, and that shit look a hot mess. That's very Sun and Leo squaring Saturn and Taurus, like wearing raggedy clothes, or, you know, I just thought that was funny, but completely unrelated to the situation. So yeah, Malcolm also has his Leo Sun sextile in Jupiter and Scorpio. Now this is an aspect, I would say this could be the aspect that actually saved his daughter's life. You know, this is an aspect that can produce a lot of protection, especially like spiritual protection. Jupiter in Scorpio in and of itself can bring about near-death circumstances, or a circumstance where you could almost lose your life. And the fact that it's sextile in his Sun really helps out in the sense that, like, you could even look at this as other people intervening to be able to, like, come in and save his daughter's life. You know, unfortunately he passed on, but now I will argue that this is an aspect that can contribute towards him being memorialized in death. But also, like, it can speak to the longevity of his career, the type of career that he's had. Once again, being in Hollywood for a good little minute. And with Jupiter in Scorpio, you know, your ability to succeed and meet your goals really is contingent upon your ability to, like, evolve and shape shift. You know what I'm saying? Like, or maybe you encounter some type of issue or test when it comes to, like, your ability to persevere in whatever field it is that you're in. In this case, it's sextile in the Sun and Leo, so this could be like the entertainment industry, or him working with other people, you know, having friends in high places. That's another way I would look at this aspect. But definitely like somebody who could protect their child, where there could be a lot of spiritual protection surrounding the child. So even, like I said, in death, I feel like this aspect could bring him a lot closer to her in death, which is kind of comforting to know, you know. But also, I would even look at the Sun in Leo, sextile Jupiter in Scorpio as being indicative of Malcolm doing well in, like, overseas. Y'all know how you have some entertainers who in America may have whatever level of success that they have, but you'll look up and find out, you know, overseas, they've reached a completely different level of stardom or something like that. And I would definitely say that, you know, that could be attributed, or that could be, you know, I wouldn't be surprised if that was kind of the case with Malcolm, especially when it comes to his music. I don't know if he's released music or, you know, and had songs that did better overseas, or, like I said, maybe if he just, you know, moved somewhere else in the world and find that he's like just a really larger celebrity over there, wouldn't be surprised. But all in all, like I said, this feels like a situation where, in my opinion, he may have had like a lapse in judgment, a lapse in, you know, what he felt like he was capable of in that moment as it pertains to having the situation under control, right? As he's in the water with his child. He even has that moon in Pisces opposing his Mercury in Virgo. So, you know, even from a karmic standpoint, you know, and this is a perfect example of how that North Node energy, that Piscean North Node energy, can be overdone, or where the North Node doesn't always manifest in maybe the best outcome, you know, especially based on how the discernment is used and other things in your chart. So, you know, although he had in this lifetime, there's a lot of karma tied to your ability to escape and experience, you know, the more magical parts of life. And, you know, these are people who can be drawn towards, like I said, beaches and water and magic, things that are esoteric in nature. People who are supposed to live life, you know, more creatively inclined. Getting used to, you know, living life based on, like even like your imagination, you know, learning how to actualize your dreams. And that could be great, but it puts you in a situation, especially in his case, where you have the moon and Mercury too, opposing your Mercury in Virgo, where it can cloud your judgment, like I said, or even when it comes to your rationality, you know, cloud your ability to make rational decisions, or being, you know, clouding your ability to be selective and discriminative when it comes to certain things, like, you know, or just clouding your ability to be practical, or, you know, all that stuff. So, and once again, this is not me blaming him. This is not me, because I understand these type of things could really happen to anybody. It's just very interesting when you take a look at it from an astrological level. And once again, even though I don't want to turn into his reading into like a conspiratorial kind of reading, I still get this undercurrent in his chart where, like I said, even if his passing, there was no foul play in his passing, right? This could have genuinely have been like a freak accident, a tragedy, a loss. I still feel that there was either he passed with a lot of secrets, or, you know, like I said, pertaining to him, or maybe the things he's been through. Once again, this is not to say that he was a bad guy, but it's just a lot of things are being unveiled, right? We're living in this era of, you know, Pluto and Aquarius. This is the era of Aquarius. This is the truth era. A lot of things are coming to light. A lot of, you know, things are being moved around. You know what I'm saying? A lot of the key power players are being shifted around when we talk about the traditional rulers of society and the level of influence that even celebrities and these people in the industry hold, you know. And as things are being brought to light, you know, a lot of people's tea is going to get spilled. You know what I'm saying? Inadvertently. You know, a lot of victims are going to be revealed. A lot of things are going to be surfaced, you know, so depending on what side of the coin you fall on. And once again, might I add, Malcolm Jamal Warner is a child star. He was a child star. After a quick, you know, Wikipedia search, I found out that he started acting at 5. You know what I'm saying? So not to say he didn't have a good mom. Like I said, that moon sextile in Saturn and Taurus, I'm pretty sure helped a lot in terms of his mom, you know, making sure that he was able to find good work, good roles, you know, maintaining, keeping him grounded, you know, giving him that structure, upbringing, and all of the other stuff. But, you know, Hollywood is still Hollywood. And, you know, like I said, he has a lot of other things that could point towards him being sacrificed and victimized and living a life that could have been, you know, where he had a lot of burdens. And it's just sad to see that this was the outcome. It was sad to see him go like this. So I'm going to go ahead and end this reading here. Y'all drop down in the comments and let me know just what you thought about his chart. If any of the aspects or placements sounded familiar to you. If you know anybody with these aspects or placements, or if you can speak to them for yourself. So either way, drop down, sound off in the comment section, and I will catch y'all in the next video. Love you. Bye.